Hi guys, hi grade 9. I'm on page 72 in your technology book at a part of the work called hydraulic press, and I just quickly want to run through this with you guys so that you can understand how this works. This whole part of the syllabus is about taking a force, applying it on something and see what you can gain. That is called mechanical advantage. So in other words, it's like taking your bicycle up a hill, you put it in the easiest gear. So immediately your bicycle slows down, but what you score is you score a lot of torque or power. So it's a lot easier for you to cycle up the hill. Now in the same manner, all mechanical systems work. If you gain something, you lose something else in the same ratio. So if you're going 4 times faster, for instance, you're gonna have to cycle 4 times harder. If you want to go 4 times easier, your speed will decrease 4 times. It will be 4 times less than it had been. Now the same thing applies in the system. So you guys will see that I applied 25 newtons, but I'm going to get a lot more out on the side. We're going to look at that in a moment. But what they tell us, we have to go and look at this whole thing and see which variables are given at both. So if I'm talking about a variable, I'm talking about the same thing. This side, they tell me that it's got a 50 millimeter diameter, the cylinder. On this side, they tell me that it's got a 150 millimeter diameter. So in other words, this one, we can clearly see 50 goes into 153 times. So we can clearly see that this one is going to be 3 times, it has a 3 times bigger diameter, all right? But there's one specific thing that I want to teach you here. What we pick up is, although it's the same amount of fluid that I transfer from one cylinder to another one. Let me, for instance, explain this to you. Because it's a connected tube, it's a closed system, nothing can escape. So if I take, for instance, 10 milliliters out of this one and I transfer it through, I will get 10 milliliters in this one. But because the cylinder is wider, the travel on this one will be slower. So in other words, because this is a small area, it's the same amount of fluid I'm pressing through, but because this one is very narrow, it will travel quickly if I push down that side. On this one, it's exactly the same thing, but just the opposite. So if you press down on this one, it's got a long travel, so it will move fast. This one will move a lot slower. So the same amount of fluid is being transferred, but we do see that we've got a lot more power with this bigger syringe. So why is that? And that's what I quickly want to talk to you guys about. So there is a very simple explanation for that. And this is just some background. So before we get there, I'm just quickly going to show you guys what you do here. When you get something like this, they tell us 25 newtons. They want to know, what do I get out on that side? So very easy. Just go and search for the same variables. Now we find that they give us the 150 and the 50. Simply divide the one into the other. Take the biggest one, divide the 50 into the 150. So that tells us that the ratio here is 1 to 3 with regards to the cylinder size. Okay. So what we know is something that travels faster will always have less force. So you can literally go and say, if this is 25 newtons here, this is a bigger cylinder, it's going to travel slower because it's wider, but I'm going to gain 3 times the force on this side. So you can literally go and say 25 newtons and multiply it with 3, giving us a 75 Newton output on this side. Now for those of you guys who wonder about why this happens, you don't have to know what I'm going to explain now, but I just want to quickly explain it. So I'm just going to quickly take this page away. So simply, guys, what you need to do is you have to think about this. In this cylinder, that piston at the top has got a certain area. In this one, I have the same principle. I have a bigger cylinder or a bigger piston there, which is that disc there. And the area on this disc is also 3 times bigger than this one because of the size of this whole thing. You can go and work it out with area if you really want to. but that's not necessary. But what I want to tell you over here is because the area is 3 times more on this side, there's something that we can learn from this. We learn about the whole principle of the law of so guys, the principle is called Pascal's principle, and what it simply says is if I've got a closed system, in other words like a pipe with a cylinder and another cylinder, nothing can escape out of it. If I apply a certain amount of pressure on this one, the pressure inside this whole system will be exactly the same everywhere. So if I apply 25 newtons here, the 25 newtons around the edges of these pipes will be exactly the same. It's the same amount of pressure pushing against all of the sides, so that is not different. Why then do I get more power out if the pressure I apply is exactly the same here? So if I apply the pressure inside the system stays exactly the same. So whatever the pressure is here will be the same there. Now the answer we find in a very simple explanation, and that explanation is the following. Because this piston is 3 times bigger, we know that Pascal's law teaches us that the pressure here and there is exactly the same. But what is the difference? The difference is the area over here and the area over there is different. And the pressure being applied on the area over here is different. So if I, for instance, go or the pressure is the same but the area is different. Now think about this. If I have to move something with one finger over here, and over here I'm using my whole hand to move a cupboard. Okay, obviously if you push with your finger, like push with your finger against the wall, it's going to be difficult for you. If you push with your whole hand, it's a lot easier, although it might not move. But the principle that I want to bring down to you is simply that because over here I'm only using my finger, there's a smaller area that I'm pushing on. I can push with the same amount of pressure, but on this one I'm pushing with all my fingers or with my whole hand. So everywhere where my finger makes contact, I've got more power with the same amount of force that I'm pushing. So therefore, if I've got a piston that's 3 times bigger, because of the area that's bigger, although I push with the same amount of force, because I have a bigger area to push against the fluid, I will then get out more force. In this case, exactly 3 times more. So I hope that explains it a bit to you guys. If it confuses you, just don't think about that. Just simply go and search for something that is the same and know that that ratio works straight through. So the 50 goes into the 153 times. That is very easy to understand. So if this one is 25 newtons, that's a bigger cylinder, it will move slower. You just take the 25 and you multiply it with whatever this ratio is. In this case 3, so the answer is going to be 75 newtons that you're going to get out. In the same manner, with the same ratio, you will see the distance also will be different. So if you move it, because the ratio is 3 here, so if you press down on this side for 3 centimeters, on the other side it's only going to lift 1 centimeter. So exactly the same ratio. Just remember, a bigger cylinder will give you out more force, but it will move slower. So it's that same thing that I spoke about earlier. If you gain something, you lose something else. What do I lose? I lose the amount of distance that it will move, but I score in the amount of force that I get out on the output side. Okay, I hope this helped you guys a lot.